Welcome to Beyond the Scoreboard, the podcast that takes you inside the huddle, beyond the plays, and into the minds of coaches. I'm Perry Black, and each episode will bring you exclusive interviews with coaches from all levels, sharing their stories, strategies, and lessons they've learned along the way. So pull up a seat, let's get beyond the numbers, beyond the highlights, beyond the scoreboard. Welcome back to episode 5 of Beyond the Scoreboard, fans. Episode 5 is brought to you by All Valley Mini Storage. Please see them for any of your storage needs. You can give them a call or stop into their office there on Appleside. So, Austin, pleased to have you, man. How's it going?
Going good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the viewers here that don't know who you are, you just want to give us a quick kind of background on you and UFC fighter and kind of the dojo and
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so martial arts is kind of my gig. I professional fighter, started fighting when I was like 15 years old, and then turned pro and everything. Had a professional career, still actively competing now. And then I run a martial arts school as well. Teach like kids as young as 4 years old, all the way up to like professional fighters and kind of everything in between. So yeah, martial arts is kind of my full-time thing.
Awesome. And so now that you're kind of the main guy in charge there at the dojo, what's kind of been the hardest transition there for you after, I know, your dad's passing and all that kind of stuff? Has there been ever any kind of controversy on whether you wanted to keep it open or not, or has that always kind of been something that you knew you wanted to do?
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to own and run a martial arts school, and I had some different ideas. Obviously, at times I was thinking about maybe moving somewhere else and opening up a school. Not anything like real serious, but it was kind of in the back of my head, maybe going somewhere and running a school somewhere else. But also he had such a big reputation in the Valley and is so well known and had such a very successful business. It kind of just made sense to take that over and continue running it and try to grow it and make it as big as possible. But yeah, it's always just, I mean, martial arts is kind of like all I've ever done and really all I'm very good at. So I might as well stick with that and not try to do anything else. And I love it. Like, I'm pretty passionate about teaching and coaching, and I like that part of it. And some of the tougher stuff was, the business aspect of it, the advertising, the marketing, the invoices and
Right.
billing and all that stuff. So that's probably like was the biggest adjustment when I took it over full time myself, was just kind of getting everything in order and ran the way that kind of I wanted to, and developing systems with the business portion of it. That I would say that was probably the most difficult part. The teaching and stuff I've done for so long, so I know how to teach. I know how to coach. I know how to train young students and fighters and everything, because I've just been doing it since I mean, my dad had me teaching like 4 and 5-year-olds when I was like 12 and 13. I was teaching classes.
Oh, nice.
So I've just been doing that for so long. It's kind of second nature. So that part was easy. Just kind of the business operations part was something that took a little bit of time and navigating and kind of figuring out how I wanted to run it.
Right. So did you, what was that? What exactly was your role kind of before you took it over? Did you have any kind of inside intel into that before, or was it kind of just trial by fire there?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty heavily involved in the business, teaching and then helping out also with billing and stuff like that. But I always kind of thought there was like a more efficient way to do some things. But, you can only tell your dad so much, and I had some of my own ideas of how I would want to do things a little bit different, about maybe make it a little bit easier and stuff. But he'd been doing it so long the way he was doing it, getting him to change it at that point, it wasn't really going to happen, I think. But I kind of knew, the gist of how he ran it. And then I had my kind of own ideas. So kind of that adjustment of taking the stuff that I liked that he had already in place and then implementing what I thought kind of would make more sense and work better for me too.
So obviously your dad had a big role in kind of your training growing up and all of that kind of stuff, obviously with the karate and everything that's a part of that. But how much role did he play in the actual MMA part of it? Was he the only coach you had? Kind of how did that kind of leading up to your career as a professional, how did that kind of work?
Right. Yeah. So he obviously was a karate black belt and then trained that for pretty much his whole life. And then he got into kickboxing too. He did some professional kickboxing as well in like the 80s and stuff. So he had kind of like the striking stuff down pretty good. But the MMA was, it didn't even start until the early 90s. It wasn't even a
Sure.
thing. So it came on very late. And he got interested in it like right away and kind of started learning jiu-jitsu and grappling and stuff in the 90s, and was kind of traveling to seminars trying to learn it. There wasn't anybody around here that was doing that stuff. So we had to go kind of all over to find people to train with and learn from. But he was really interested in it from the jump. And so he kind of got into it then. And then it was like probably like 2004, 2005, he started, guys were coming to him, and MMA was getting more popular, and there was starting to be kind of events around the Northwest, and some guys in the Valley kind of came to him like, hey, you should start training fighters and start, competing and taking guys around. And so we kind of developed a little small team at that point. And then, he's kind of figuring out how to train MMA fighters at that time, because it was so new still. And there wasn't a lot of, people didn't really know how to train for it. So he was kind of figuring it out. And then as I got older, I was pretty young at that point, but as I got older, he kind of developed his system of how he trains fighters, and he developed a pretty good system. So yeah, he was my main coach starting off. And then, so 2007 was my first fight. So I remember it was my freshman year going into my sophomore year, and in the summertime. And that was my first fight. And at that point, yeah, he was the only person I'd ever trained with. But he was pretty cool with, like, he always wanted to kind of grow and go out and train in other places. So he took me to Vegas like multiple times every year. We'd go down there for like a week or two, and that's kind of a hub for MMA. I go down there and train. Went to California, Sacramento, and stuff. So Florida, he kind of took me all over and tried to get different coaches involved and kind of help with things that maybe he wasn't an expert in, the jiu-jitsu and grappling and stuff, and some different parts of the game that he thought I could benefit from training in other places. So we kind of traveled around a lot, but he was always like my main head coach. And then he also took me to Spokane a lot, and I started training with some guys up there. And then Spokane's had a number of UFC athletes out of there. They have a pretty good team, Michael Chiesa and Sam Sicilia back in the day. And so I started training with those guys a lot, developed a really good friendship with them, and we kind of just always carried that on. So I've always done a lot of like cross training and mixing it up with other teams. But yeah, he's definitely always been my head coach, my main coach. But I had a lot of different influences and other people that kind of helped out along the way.
Awesome. And so obviously all that training and stuff led to some fights, and obviously you had to be very successful to get some of the larger professional bouts. And so what led to, or kind of walk us through getting invited and ultimately being able to fight in the UFC? How did that kind of transpire? What kind of are the measurements that they're looking for?
Yeah, so it's weird. It's a lot different. It's actually the most similar sport to it, I think, is kind of golf. Is actually the rise up and what you have to go through, and how shitty it can be at times, and you're not making any money, and you're just doing this because you're hoping that it'll pay off eventually. And so that is kind of probably the most similar sport on the climb up, because it's not like football and basketball and baseball. It's like laid out. It's pretty laid out. You go to high school, you get recruited, you go to college, you do good in college, you go to the draft, you get drafted, boom, you're on. Just systematically laid out for you of how to achieve whatever your goal is. Fighting's not like that. You kind of figuring it out as you go. You have to win fights. Obviously, you have to be really good, like on the regional scene to start. Like the Northwest is kind of where I was, my region. So I was fighting all the best guys in the Northwest and winning those fights for the most part, and doing really good. And then I took a couple, almost like if you're like comparing it to baseball, it's like a triple A kind of, I took like a fight in like a triple A organization basically. So not quite the big time, not the UFC, not the MLB, but kind of like right below that. And I took a fight it was a Titan FC was the organization. And I went in there and I won and I looked good. And so that was the first one that kind of got my name on the radar for the UFC.
And when was that about?
That was 2016, probably.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that was 2016. That kind of got my name. Like the UFC kind of knew who I was at that point, and were kind of like following me a little bit. And I think I had one or two more fights after that. And then Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series became a thing. The very first season they've done that. They've done it tons of seasons now, but that was the first season in 2017. And so they had known about me. And the Contender Series is basically up and comers. So it's guys that haven't made it yet, that are kind of on the rise, young guys kind of trying to break in. And so I got an opportunity to fight on Dana White's Contender Series. And I lost that fight, but it was a really good fight. It was back and forth. It was very close. And so after that fight, they like loved me, even though I lost the fight. The matchmakers and the UFC and Dana himself kind of came and talked to me like right after that fight was over. They kind of told me like, hey, just stick with it. You're like right there. We're gonna get you. You're not getting a contract today, but just stay in it, and you're gonna be in here very soon. And that season, so like if you win your fight on the Contender Series, there's 5 guys. There's 5 fights, so 5 guys go into this room, and then they sit in there, and then Dana like picks 1 or 2 of them. He's like, gives you the contract. So
Okay.
I lost, and they still sit me in the back room. So that kind of like showed like how good of the fight was. I was like the only guy that lost the fight, and I still got in the room, and I was like, shit, maybe I'm still gonna get a contract that day. And I didn't get it, but my performance was so well, and they enjoyed it so much that after that, I didn't have to do any other fights. About 6 months later, they picked me up and signed me.
Oh, nice.
So that's kind of what the my experience was trying to get in the UFC. Some guys have different ones, but that's kind of pretty standard and normal for you're trying to get like dominate your regional scene, get into one of those bigger minor league promotions, do well, and then you're kind of like right on the cusp at that point of hopefully getting picked up and signed.
Awesome. So obviously that kind of success, especially here in a smaller community, is going to breed a lot of notice, and people are going to, hopefully that would bring people to your
Right.
to your business, you would think. And
Yeah.
So how much do you think that impacted? I know that you mentioned that you have quite a few number of athletes that you're training at this point. Do you think that helped your, kind of your business and your training center, or was it just, your dad's reputation had it done kind of already? So you just want to speak on
Yeah.
that? Is there kind of a balance there, you think?
Yeah, I mean, he had a really good reputation, but I think what it did was like show people that you can make it, to the highest level right here, and it is possible. Because sometimes it seems like for any sport, like a major organization, like NFL, NBA, MLB, whatever, it just seems almost like an unattainable goal. It's just so crazy. It's like so hard. It's like so few people make it. It's hard to like think that yourself could do it. And so I think seeing somebody from here make it to that kind of gave people hope and like, shoot, maybe I can do it too. So we did see a big influx in an enrollment, and like younger high school kids, a lot of wrestlers, starting to come in and train, and realizing that it's something that can be done, and you can, make some money and make a living and make it to like the highest level. So I think that's kind of what it did more than anything. But yeah, it did help enrollment, I think, a good amount. And you're getting a lot of publicity in the valley and stuff, obviously, through that. And so your name just kind of gets out there even more. So it definitely didn't hurt.
Right. Yeah, which is always a good thing.
Yeah.
So now you, I'm not sure if transition is the right word, but seems like you've taken on quite a few, decent regional MMA fighters. So what does that kind of look like for you on an everyday basis? Is that something that's part of, the training, or is that kind of its own separate business? How do you kind of manage that with your regular, Karate Kids and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have like a whole bunch of different programs. Like we have our kids karate program. We have like adult Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And then we have like our adult mixed martial arts MMA program. And adult MMA program, we have a lot of people that train in that have no ambition to fight. They don't want to fight. They just want to learn MMA. They want to learn, they want to get in good shape, and they enjoy the sport and they enjoy the training, and they don't have any ambition to like actually compete. So we have a ton of those kind of people. And then we have also like the people that are training to fight. Like they're there to learn how to fight, to compete. And also in that group, you have people with different goals also. Like we have guys that, they just want to do some amateur fights. They enjoy it. They want to do some competition, and they don't have any goals of turning pro or going to the UFC or anything like that. But they do want to compete and do some fights. So we have some of those guys. Then you have guys that are like, man, I want to like their goal is just to turn pro. Like I want to do fights. I want to be able to go pro. And then other guys that like Drake Randall's and Demetri Morales's and Melvin Joy's, those guys that are doing it, they want to go to the UFC. So we have a pretty good mix of those guys that are actually competing, but a lot of them have different kind of goals in mind of what they actually want to do with it. So we have the MMA program, and then obviously those guys that are looking to take it more serious, we have more classes and specialized classes for them that are just like specific for those guys that are really trying to take it to the next level. And then obviously like one-on-one lessons are a lot more with those kind of athletes as well.
Yeah, that, and I imagine that the Clearwater Combat, MMA has something to do with that. What
Yeah.
exactly is your involvement in that, and kind of how did that originate?
Yeah. So that was like my dad. He started putting on MMA events in the Valley in 2008, I think it was. He actually did one at Clarkson High School a long time ago
Oh,
in
wow.
like 2007 or 2008. That was kind of crazy. And then he did some and he started doing them at the Bennett building out in Asotin. He did like probably 5 or 6 out there. And then the casino kind of saw like, oh, this is something kind of growing. We'd like to have events like that out here. They're always looking, they have concerts and all this stuff. So they wanted to have some MMA fights. They'd done boxing in the past, and MMA is kind of grown in popularity, and it's kind of overtook boxing in a sense. So they were interested in that, and so they hired him to be the promoter. So then he started doing promotions out there since 2008, 2009, and did them all the way until his passing. And then when he passed, it was during COVID, so they weren't really doing events at that time. And then when they kind of were ready to start doing them again, they got a hold of me and asked if I wanted to, take over the promotion and run it. And I did, and that's something I've always kind of wanted to do also anyway. So I took over that promotion and have been running it since. And that one, it's really cool to have something like that in the Valley, because you're able to build young fighters. So it's a pro-am show. So we have pros on it, and then a number of amateur fights as well. So you're able to kind of get your guys experience. You're able to match make accordingly. Sometimes you take your guys out to another random show somewhere else. You don't know who they're getting matched up with. You don't know the skill level of the guys. Maybe they're in over their head and stuff. So being able to have a little bit more control and make sure there's fair matchups and kind of build those guys up it's something that's really beneficial when you have a team and you're able to help kind of build your guys up and get them experience. And then hopefully the show is kind of, it's trying to build them to like the next level, trying to get them to one of those bigger minor league promotions is kind of what you're doing with this kind of show, giving them experience, getting them fights. Hopefully, ideally they're getting wins, and then they're able to kind of move on to eventually a step up and like a UFC Fight Pass kind of show or something like that.
You have direct, correspondence and conversations with those other leagues, or how does that kind of promotion from you to the?
Yeah. So I've been in it for so long, I've developed like a lot of relationships with a lot of promoters, and I have an agent for myself who he manages and UFC fighters. So he actually is able to help me too, kind of navigate and kind of get these guys to their next show. Like Drake was able to fight on a UFC Fight Pass show this past year up in Canada, and I kind of developed a relationship with that promoter. And then same thing. So it's kind of like your coach or your manager. You got to have some connections. You got to be in the know. You got to know some people to be able to help facilitate your fighters to that next spot. If you don't, it can be really hard. And if you don't have kind of connections and relationships with those people, a lot of times you'll see guys just kind of stick in one spot for a long time and not be able to kind of grow out of that.
Gotcha. Well, man, they're lucky to have such a decorated athlete come out of, the Valley, and obviously your guys that are training are lucky to have you in that sense, because I can't imagine that there's too many in the region that have quite the same type of reputations you have with some of those people around, especially maybe at your age group, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So let's just switch gears just a little bit, Austin.
Yeah.
Talk about, obviously this is a little bit of a coaching
Yeah.
podcast. So talk kind of more on how maybe your instructing and your coaching has evolved over the years. Obviously, being such a high level performer and athlete, sometimes it can be hard to kind of break down certain things to the level that, I mean, you have such a wide range of grades and ages that you're teaching. You want
Yeah.
to talk about kind of how that's evolved and maybe some tips and tricks your dad's kind of given you to help you kind of break it down so far, after having such a large and vast knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that's kind of cool is I was just talking to someone else about this, but so like a lot of these like mega gyms in the country, like in Vegas and California, and they get a lot of like transport. So they get guys that have turned pro, they have a really good base for mixed martial arts or fighting, and then they move away from wherever they were at. They go to one of these big mega gyms. So these guys, these mega gyms are just getting guys that are already really good, and then they're kind of fine tuning them from there. We obviously don't have people moving into Lewiston to come train with a base. So like we've literally from the start always been taking guys that know pretty much nothing and trying to build them up from there. So because we've always done that, that's all we really know. We don't
Right.
have guys that have a really good base coming in, and then we're just kind of tweaking them and trying to tighten up this here and there. We're developing from the rock bottom, teaching them how to throw a jab. First punch you learn how to throw is a jab, and we're teaching it from that level, and then hopefully growing them all the way into the pro level. Kind of tricks and stuff. Like, I mean, one thing that I've also learned like over these last few years that I've really been coaching is every athlete's a lot different. So you got to tap into all of them a little bit different. Like some of these guys I can coach like really hard, and I can be very hard on it and pretty like aggressive with my coaching style towards. And other guys you can't do that to, man. You're scaring them off. So you got to be a little bit more nurturing, a little bit calmer voice when you're talking to them. So that's something that I've learned is like adjusting my coaching style to each athlete. They're not going to all be the same. So I can't coach them all the same. I'm not going to just have, this is my coaching style. This is how I coach. Take it or leave it. This is how I do it, and this is how it's going to be done. I've tried to navigate through that to where I'm coaching each person a little bit different and trying to bring the best out of them the best way that I can. And so that's one thing that I've kind of learned these last few years is being able to adjust to each athlete and not just being stuck in my way of like, this is how I do it, this is how we do it, take it or leave it. Like you got to be able to kind of adjust to the athlete, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that, and I think that's across all sports, and
Right.
definitely not a unique thing to MMA by any means. And
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest thing to learn, especially when you're talking to young coaches, is man, if you try to think that your one style is going to work, it doesn't. And I think that's why we had such like
Right.
stiff and fundamental athletes. And as you watch on TV, you watch like NBA players from the 60s and 70s, it's like so
Yeah.
fundamental and structured, and it's like, I
Right.
mean, that just doesn't happen anymore.
No.
We have such high flying athletes and highly capable people that, with the research and everything that's happened in all of athletics, I think we're kind of silly if we think that it has to be one way and only one way.
Right.
I do
Yeah.
believe
I
there's,
agree completely.
I mean, there's obviously certain things that have to happen no matter what. I mean, there's definitely
Yeah.
the basic
Yeah. There's
fundamental
like a
things.
base
Yeah,
yeah,
right. And
for
that's
sure.
never going to go away. But man, if we
No.
start putting, fences along people's athletic abilities, I think that's just
Yeah.
you're just asking for issues at that point. So with all of the training and the coaching, have you ever inspired to go and try to train or coach somebody that is in the UFC circuit? Has that ever been kind of something that you've thought about, or is it more the competing and then kind of owning the dojo part? Is that more of your goal?
Yeah. Yeah. Shoot, the goals have like changed so much. Like I feel like the last like 10 years I've had like my goals have changed a lot. And you know, I I've kind of put myself on the back burner for competing now. I'm getting a little bit older. I'm 33. I still feel really good. I still feel like I can compete at a pretty high level. But kind of like I said, my goals have changed a little bit. And, with the mixed martial arts part of it, like obviously I want to have a very successful business. I want to have, a great kids program, a great youth program. And that's really important to me because I think youth martial arts, karate, jiu-jitsu, all of it is really great for all kids, and the discipline you learn and everything that martial arts brings, I think is awesome for kids. So bringing that, having that continue to happen in the Valley is something that's I'm passionate about and I care about a lot. And I want to make sure it's always happening. And we have a great kids program right now. So that's obviously a goal, but kind of keeping with like the mixed martial arts portion of it, with me stepping back a little bit with my competing days. I'm not done yet, but I've just kind of pulled back a lot. My goal has been to get a guy to the UFC. So I was able to get to the UFC myself. Now my goal is to train, not just one. I'm hoping to get multiple guys into the UFC and be their head coach and their trainer. So that's kind of been my goal the last couple of years. It's what I was talking to someone about is like, would you rather get back in the UFC, or would you rather have one of your fighters that you coach get to the UFC? And 100% at this point in my life, I would rather get one of my guys that I'm coaching to the UFC than myself get back there. That's a lot more important to me now than myself at this point. So yeah, that's kind of the goal, is to get an athlete there and then get another one and have a stable and loose. And because I think once, I was able to do it, and I think another one happens, it's just like, it's infectious. Like people like really start believing in the program. They trust the coach. They trust the process of what you're doing. They're seeing it happen. And then I think like a lot of stuff can start happening from that point, because, with MMA, you don't have to be 6'10". You don't have to run a 4.3 40. You can just be, they have every weight classes for everything. There's a 125-pound weight class. So like, you don't have to be like, a physical specimen. And so it's possible for everybody. It's just the hard work, the discipline that takes, the years and years of training, being willing to be broke and not making money for a while before you make it. It can be tough on people too. So the sacrifice that it has, but it can happen. And I think like I said, once I get one of them in and then another, and I think we could have something pretty cool here in the Valley, and pretty special, and watch some really high level mixed martial artists come out of Lewiston and Clarkston and Asotin.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I think, as we start transitioning from, really having aspirations to play or compete to coaching, it seems like that's kind of a natural progression for people, especially with that competitive fire still being there for a lot of people. Giving up athletics is so difficult. I do want to get your kind of guess and feel on, do you think MMA and UFC fighting and any of that kind of stuff will ever make it into like the high school circuits?
I don't think so. I would be surprised.
Probably insurance and all of that fun stuff.
I just think I could see like jiu-jitsu maybe, because like you already have wrestling in there, and jiu-jitsu is kind of similar risk and everything that's involved in wrestling. So I could see possibly like jiu-jitsu continuing to grow and eventually get into like a high school, like, or even just having like a high school elective or a program like that, where you have jiu-jitsu as like a PE class you could take or something. I could see stuff like that maybe starting to happen. MMA, I doubt.
Right.
Yeah.
And obviously the logistical part of that would probably be a nightmare, but man, it just seems like if you were, somebody that was really high up in the ranks of that being able to grow that sport, if you could start it somehow in there, and I'm not sure how, it's way above my knowledge base on how you'd be able to get that done, but if you could get it into universities somehow, I think it'd explode. And I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I'm not sure how that would be possible, and I know most of the insurance companies would say you're an idiot for even thinking about that, but
yeah,
it seems like like you said, if wrestling can be a sport that everybody can do across the nation, it seems like you'd be able to start transitioning a little bit. And obviously, there's probably going to have to be some restraints on it, and I'm sure you have to wear a bunch of stuff you wouldn't normally have to wear and all that kind of crap. But man, it seems like if you could start training, and once one of these bigger universities gets their hands on it, God, the amount of money one could make would be astronomical. I think. But,
and usually if there's enough money involved, everybody will get into it.
Right. I'm surprised somebody hasn't tried. I'm surprised Dana White hasn't been like, man, here, I'll give you all the money you want, I'll pay for it all. Let's watch USC and UCLA fight one time or something like that. I think.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that would be cool. Or even like, it's not an Olympic sport either, too. So that would be something also that would be cool to see. MMA get into the Olympics, I think would be, I mean, every country does MMA now, it's
Right.
worldwide everywhere, and it's growing everywhere and more popular every day. So I think, being in the Olympics would be something would be pretty cool for the sport too.
And that might be more realistic, really.
I think that'd be more feasible. I mean, they got
Yeah,
boxing already in it and everything.
yeah,
So,
right.
um, yeah, probably better chance of that, I would think.
All right, man. Well, give us a breakdown on how your athletes have done here recently. I know you've had a couple big fights, and your
Yeah.
the fighters that you've been training have been working pretty hard lately. So give us kind of a breakdown on how that's been going.
Yeah, it's been awesome. So our team's the best and the biggest it's ever been right now. We have like 10 pro fighters fighting out of our gym now, and then, countless amateurs. We 20 to 25 amateur fighters right now too. So, it's a really good group of the young developing group of kids that are all kind of banding together and training together and really like feeding off of each other, which is fun to watch. So last night, actually, we went over to Auburn, Washington, and at the Muckleshoot Casino, we had two of our pros, two of our young kids. They're both 21 years old. Melvin Joy was the first fight. He's a welterweight, 170 pounder, and he just improved his record to 4. So he won a decision, looked really good, fought an awesome, really smart technical fight, and kind of dominated his guy all 3 rounds to 0, and looked really good doing it. So that was awesome to see. And then the other one that's he has getting a pretty good big name in the Valley, and he's got some hype behind him, and he's doing really well. Is Dimitri Morales. He just improved his record to 5-0 and was able to knock out his opponent in the first round with some elbows. And he fought really good, and he actually won a pro belt. So it's like basically a Northwest Circuit
Awesome.
professional belt. So that was the first one he's won in the pro ranks, and he's 5-0 now. And like I said, they're both 21, and they're kind of like we have this young core group right now of like 18 to 21 year olds. We have there's like 7, 8 of them that are all training together and competing a lot. And those two are kind of at the front of that group. And then there's a lot of amateurs that are getting going right now below them. And so I know coming into the gym next week, all those guys are going to be pumped up, and everybody just kind of feeds off that momentum. And just like any sport, it's an individual sport, but this is a team sport at the same time. And when you're seeing guys that you're training with and sparring with all the time having success, it just rubs off, and just like any sport does, and motivates everybody, and kind of brings the morale of the gym up and the team up. So, I'm pumped to get into the gym tomorrow after those wins, because I know it's going to be big class. Everybody's going to be pumped up and scrapping on Monday.
Awesome. So what's next for those guys?
Yeah, so it just kind of well, actually, I kind of do know. Usually, we kind of get through the one fight, and then you kind of start planning what's next. We have I have an event coming up in at the Clearwater Casino. I can't officially announce the date yet because I had to wait for them to do it, but it's going to be this spring, like April-ish.
Nice.
And so they're both planning on, they should both be on that card as long as I can find the right opponents and everything. But both of them should be fighting on that card in the spring. And the number of our fighters, we'll have a whole bunch of guys, amateur and pros, competing on that one coming up. So that's kind of the next step for them. And then they're in that kind of spot that I was kind of talking about with my career, where your first thing is to dominate the regional scene. So basically dominate the Northwest. So you're just taking out everybody you can find, fighting the toughest guys. And they're kind of in that spot of their career right now, where they're trying to just own the region, own the Northwest. And they're so young. That's one thing too, is like, because of their age, some guys use faster because of their age. Like some guys get in it a little bit later, and it's, so you got to kind of go, and you got to take more chances. You got to take tougher fights, and maybe put them in a fight that you don't know if they're quite ready for, but they're at an age where it's kind of like go now, or you're not going to have the chance. They're
Right.
so young, and they've already got a 4-0 and 5-0 record at 21. I can be very patient with them, really pick the fights, and build them up at a very slow pace because of their age and their ability. So that's a nice thing. It takes a little bit of pressure off. You don't feel like you're rushing their career, and you can be really smart about it, and kind of really pick your fights and build them at the right pace. So that's kind of where those two are at right now.
Nice. And I think this is kind of a common question. I'm sure you get it a lot, but what's kind of the financial incentive for fights like that? Like what? I mean, you don't got to tell me specifically what those guys make or anything, but what's kind of the average on somebody
Yeah,
would make in a fight during those type of times in the regional circuit like that?
yeah, they're not making much. Like in those early, I would say like first like 1 to 5 fights in that kind of beginning pro career, you're making $1,000 to $2,000 probably a fight. And then what I always tell these guys though is, man, the Valley wants to support you. They want to get behind you. They want to be a part of you doing this. You have to go sell yourself to these businesses. You have to go get sponsors. You got to go make yourself accessible to the community because they want to help you. Like people around here, they love supporting their own and getting behind, whatever it is. And if they're doing this and people, enjoy it, their business, there's tons of business that want to be a part of that. So I always tell them, you got to get out there, you got to market yourself, and you can, supplement your income and be able to work a little bit less of your normal job and spend more time training because you're getting this outside sponsor help that can help facilitate you and supplement some income so you can get by and be able to train the way you need to train through that time. So I'm always kind of telling those guys, you got to get out there, you got to market yourself on social media. You got to talk to business, you got to develop relationships with, business owners, successful businesses and people that love the sport and want to get behind it. So I'm always kind of pushing them in that realm. And I was just like, you can't rely on these fights that you're fighting once every 3 or 4 months, making $1,000 or $2,000 to
Yeah, right.
get you by. Like you gotta figure out other ways to make it work. So and those two guys are doing that, and they're getting a lot of support from the Valley, and that are helping them out a lot, and allowing them to be able to train and not have to work 40, 50 hours a week at the mill and then try to come in and train. They're
Right.
able to work part-time and pay their bills and be able to train as much as possible.
So most of those fights, and kind of asking you here as more of a promoter, is most of those payouts, sponsorship driven, or is that kind of at the gate money? How does that kind of work with the whole Clearwater combat situation?
Yeah, so basically, like with like casino shows, which is more what you see now, you don't see a lot of people just like putting on a show at the event center because, or like a random event center or at the Bennett Building or anything, because you have to front everything. With the casino shows, basically they hire me, so they give me a budget, and then with that budget, I make everything happen. So that's kind of how, and then the casino, makes their money, and then everybody else makes theirs. But yeah, they basically give me a budget. They hire me, put on the show, you do everything. I put on the show, and they kind of facilitate the money to the refs, the judges, the my workers, the fighters, and all that stuff.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
All right, Austin. So I know you've got a big fight here coming up. Was at the end of the month, right?
Friday actually coming up
Friday.
Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So talk us through that. Who you fighting? Where you fighting? All that good stuff.
yeah. Yeah, I'm fighting in Boise, Idaho at the Idaho Center down there Friday night. And I'm fighting a guy named Solo Hatley. He's from Arkansas. So he's coming up like I'm kind of it's in Boise, but like the Idaho kind of local guy in a sense. And then he's kind of the out of town guy from Arkansas coming up. He's a tough fighter. He's fought in Bellator, which for a long time was kind of like the, UFC and Bellator were kind of the two major MMA promotions. He fought in Bellator for a little bit. He's beat some guys that are in the UFC right now. So he's a tough fighter. And yeah, I'm excited to, get back in and compete and kind of challenge myself. And that's something that I kind of miss always when I don't fight for it, which has been like over 2 years since I fought last, is I just miss kind of the challenge and like, the anxiousness that you feel leading up to a competition and the kind of anxiety that you feel. And I kind of miss that stuff sometimes. And I was missing it a lot. And so I'm excited just to compete, challenge myself, fight somebody who's also really good, and try to kind of solve the puzzle that he brings and figure out a way to get the job done.
Awesome. Well, good luck there, obviously,
Yeah, thanks,
and
man.
everybody here will be rooting for you, and can't wait to
Yeah.
see how that goes. Just to kind of close up here, got a couple general trivia questions for you. See
Yeah.
how your knowledge is. So, who's the first UFC champion in history?
Royce Gracie,
Yeah, and in what year was the actual UFC founded?
1993.
Boom. Who is the first fighter to hold two UFC belts in different weight classes simultaneously?
Conor McGregor.
That's right. And then I think this one is a little easier, but who was the first female fighter to win a UFC championship?
Ronda Rousey.
All right. And who was the first person to defeat Ronda Rousey in the UFC?
Holly Holm, left head kick.
There you go. And let's see. What is the maximum weight limit for the UFC lightweight division?
55.
And I think the last one I'm going to ask you, and I think you're going to know this for sure, but what is the nickname for Anderson Silva?
The Spider.
Awesome. All right, man. And then kind of the last segment we do with everybody is I just ask you a bunch of questions. Give me the very first thing that pops in your head. It'll be kind of across the board and many different things.
Okay.
Just answer the best you can, the fastest you can.
All right.
What's your most favorite pump-up song?
Can't Stop, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Nice. Who do you look up to the most in any athletic event?
Well, that one's tough. I mean, like I'll say Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods. Those are kind of like my athletes of childhood. So probably those two.
What is your favorite sport outside of UFC?
NFL, football.
Football. Nice.
For sure, yeah.
What sport do you enjoy playing the most that isn't UFC?
Golf.
Awesome. Where do you like to play golf the most?
Where do I like to play golf the most? Well, I mean, I play at Blues Country Club, but Circling Raven's fun.
Yeah,
like Circling Raven.
I've been to a lot of places, and Circle Raven's my favorite. I love it.
Yeah, it is a fun course.
If you haven't played it yet, man, you need to go find a place to play that.
Yeah.
All right. You got kind of a baseball here question. Some people, I gotta ask you it though.
Yeah.
Who is the only player to hit 2 grand slams in the same inning?
Oh, jeez.
Nobody's got this right. Nobody's got this right, so don't feel bad.
Did it happen recently?
No, 1999. This guy's son currently plays.
Vladimir Guerrero?
Close. That's a good guess. Fernando Tatis Sr.
Yeah.
All right, and then last one I've got here for you. How has balancing being a father and also a professional athlete been?
Challenging at times.
Challenging, yes.
Yeah, it can be hard to get the training in and with the kids and everything. Yeah, it makes it tougher. It makes it harder too. Like I used to travel a lot when I get ready for fights. I go to like Vegas for a little bit or go to Spokane a ton, obviously, and stuff. With kids, just leaving all the time isn't like an option.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is, but I don't really want to do it. I like being with my kids.
Yes, that's good. All right, Austin. So, like we discussed, good luck here on Friday, and then also with, training all of your athletes and their endeavors here coming up. Where can somebody that wants to join your mixed martial arts class, how could they go about doing that? Where can they find you?
Yeah, Arnett's Martial Arts America. Like I said, we got all the programs from kids start at 4 years old all the way up. We have, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for adults. We have tons of different programs, cardio, kickboxing. So we got tons of stuff kind of for everybody. No matter what you're looking for, we probably got something for you or your kid. So you can find us on Facebook, Arnett's Martial Arts America, Instagram, Arnett's Martial Arts America, our website, all the same. So yeah, you can find us on any of those spots and send us a message or give us a call and we'll get you or your child set up.
Awesome. And where is that located at?
Yeah, 650 Thane Road, so up in the Orchards.
All right, Austin, it was great talking to you, man, and I can't wait to see how Friday night goes for you, and we'll talk soon.
Cool, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good one.
Later.
That's a wrap for this episode of Beyond the Scoreboard. A big thank you to our guests today for sharing their insights, stories, and wisdom from the world of coaching. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us reach more listeners like you who are passionate about the game and the people who make it happen. Follow us on all the socials for updates and behind-the-scenes content. And as always, join us next time as we continue to go beyond the stats, beyond the sidelines, beyond the scoreboard.